The scope of the RIA process should cover not only an assessment of the likely impacts of different policy options, but a monitoring and evaluation plan for post-implementation assessment of the proposed regulation once it has been adopted. Monitoring and evaluation lead to credibility, transparency, and accountability of the agency and the regulatory making process. In this module, we'll look at the key elements that should be included in your monitoring and evaluation plan, which, as discussed in the previous module, is one of the essential features in your RIS.
Let us first look at monitoring. This provides feedback on the progress being made towards achieving the stated objectives of the regulation, specifically on planned outputs or actions within the control of the regulator. In addition, rigorous monitoring arrangements, appeal mechanisms, and sanctions for non-compliance can be expected to increase compliance of regulated persons or entities and be more effective than ARTA being called on to intervene directly. Monitoring sets the baselines and targets of the quantitative and qualitative indicators identified in the cost-benefit analysis of the RIS.
Next is evaluation. As we are all aware, evaluation determines the effectiveness after the adoption of the regulation with respect to the expected outcome beyond the control of the regulator and intended impacts on the regulated and other affected sectors. The evaluation should show whether these projected costs and benefits in the RIS were realized and whether the proposed regulation solved the problem. Evaluation is undertaken to determine the value of a regulation from a comprehensive point of view. The evaluation is commonly based on 5 standard criteria: relevance, effectiveness, efficiency, impact, and sustainability.
Evaluating a regulation using these 5 criteria makes it possible to see the value of a regulation from different viewpoints. And as a result, the various factors that influence the success or the failure of the regulation can be identified. There are 2 ways to evaluate regulation, and these are the ex-ante evaluation, which means before the regulation's implementation. Ex-post evaluation means you do the evaluation after its initial implementation. Let's discuss how we will evaluate in each phase. Ex-ante evaluation is the RIS itself, which is based on actual context data and information to describe the relevance of the regulation, while the estimated cost-benefit analysis sets the baseline and their projection act as the targets of the regulation. Monitoring also initially covers the development up to full implementation of the regulation in line with the efficiency criterion. When deemed necessary by the agency, an interim assessment of the adopted regulation may be done. This is for early information and corresponding appropriate action by the agency, such as calibration or refinement of the regulation if necessary. An evaluation upon full implementation at the onset of a regulatory cycle is also recommended to check whether the regulation design and implementation setup conform to RIS assumptions and performance targets.
Ex-post analysis can be carried out upon the completion of one regulatory cycle using the same tools and methods which were used during the ex-ante analysis, such as standard cost model, cost-benefit analysis, cost-effectiveness analysis, or multi-criteria decision analysis. Ex-ante analysis provides the projected impacts and significance of the regulation, while ex-post analysis determines the actual impacts based on actual data generated after the implementation of the regulation. Post-implementation review, or a comparison of ex-ante projected impacts, including baseline conditions on the one hand and ex-post actual conditions after the implementation of the regulation, shall be done to inform the regulatory making process. More in-depth discussions awaits you during the RIA training proper.
We hope that this e-learning modules was able to provide you with the necessary overview on the key elements of regulatory management system. As mentioned earlier, this is only the beginning of your journey towards institutionalizing good regulatory practices.
We hope to see you and your agency participate in ARTA's other training programs on RMS and RIA.